Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine.
Trying to situate myself.
Hey, what's happening?
What's happening, my friend?
It's so good to have you here with us on Cocktails and Conversations for the beginning of 2022. I have the one and only Nikki Evans Jones, better known as Dr. Jones. We know her as Nikki Evans. And so Dr. Nikki is joining us tonight, and it's so good to have you on the show. So just before we get started, for you guys out there who don't know the one and only Dr. Evans Jones, she is a change maker. She's a change agent in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. She's doing big things down there. She is currently a principal. She took this elementary school, one of the poorest in the state of Georgia. And when she came in, she basically took the school and then increased it by 19.5 points, which became one of the most, number one elementary schools as far as growth. And you took it off the opportunity list and put it on the most, sought after list in Georgia. So
you're hyping this up.
You're doing some wonderful things in that arena. But also, too, you are really good at fundraising and working in the community. You love Atlanta. If anybody ever knows you, you are always rooting for ATL and everything that's big about the city, which is really great, which is now my second home, yes. Which I love. So it's always good to see you there. So, with that being said, it is always good to have a bison on the show to see exactly what it is that we're doing in the community and around the world and around the globe. Also, Nikki is a bison, like I stated. She went to Howard University. She also got her master's from Clark and her doctorate from Clark University there in Atlanta. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charlie. I have a little version of this that I do. And I don't know if you saw my post or my share of your post. Yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, the hunter becomes the hunted. I'm so used to asking the questions and being behind, not being the subject of what happens.
Well, you know what? Everybody needs to know what's going on with Dr. Jones down there in Atlanta. And you have really been a trailblazer for a number of years. And you really, it's interesting how when you think you know someone, and then when you really start to follow someone and really start following your friends, and me and you alike, we know a lot of people, right? And so busy, everybody know what you're doing and stuff of that nature. But it was, I would say about 6 years ago that I really focused in and was like, I didn't even know you were a principal, like that type of thing. Yeah. And then seeing you over the course of the years, doing the things that you've been doing, like you said, you have your show on Instagram. You're all about spreading love and being the change. And with me, you had me on your show. And then with you, here being loving the way you live and really trying to just be out here and really look at people who are serving their purpose, doing the things that they love to do. But also, too, how do you impact and inspire someone else in the community that are doing things? And then how do you make that shift? Because a lot of people are always looking at individuals and looking at us in a unilateral way, right? I was a marketer before I became a real estate agent. And so people are always thinking, well, how did you go from that to this, And for you as a principal, so let's just step back first and foremost, and let's talk about briefly your bio in itself, but from your own words, as a principal today, what does it take in this society today? In this environment today, and where are we going? And what do you think you want to do? Because you are embarking upon retirement. And so we want to see what you're going to be doing later in life as well.
Right. No, I thank you for all of that. And I love your show. And I also love the way that you live. And that has been since college, right? Charlie was a 5. Charlie was an experience.
Wow.
So, I mean, to just now, today, the love, the way you live, it makes so much sense because you've been living out loud, seizing the moment since, I met you or remember seeing you on campus. So kudos to you. I do want to, clarify that I'm actually not a principal now.
Okay.
I did that for 10 years and I loved every moment of it. And I've learned not to say but, and I know what my strengths are.
Right.
And it's not really managing adults. It is literally empowering people to find their truth and then help them elevate their truth. And so with that said, what I do now, and I will back up and talk about how I got into all this, but what I do now is I'm an engagement specialist at a middle school. It's the middle school that I attended. It's named after Ambassador and Howard alum, Andrew Young, his first wife, whom I knew growing up, and all that good stuff. Like I said, it's a school that I went to. My parents still live around the corner. So it was like full circle as to how do I end my career with a big bow on it. And this opportunity happened and the principal created the position for me. And so what I do is I engage partners, research institutions, parents, funders, to supplement what the state gives and all that good stuff, because we know what I've learned over the years is that it takes more than taxpayers' dollars to educate our children in the public school system. And so we do need private funders, we need donations, we need PTA money.
All of those good things. What do you see? Because back in the 80s, when you came to Howard, it was all about certain schools in the Atlanta area that was really doing extremely well. For instance, if you came to Howard, you went to Mays, you went to Doug, and you went to Woodward Academy and Lovett. Those were the North Side. Those were the 5 that you knew people pulled from. Now, what I'm seeing as an alumni president of Howard and the students that are coming to Howard, most of them are coming from private schools. So Paideia, they're still coming from Woodward, but they're not coming from the public school system. So has that, what changed?
Oh gosh, you put me on the spot. Our investment in it changed, right? As parents, our parents, my parents, and several of my friends' parents may not have had the means to put their kids in private schools without it being a strain, right? But they also felt like, why do I have to? I shouldn't have to. I'm paying these tax dollars. Why shouldn't I have to? And then the other part to that would be that the Black middle class in the city of Atlanta was built on the backs of educators. So public school educators were not going to send their kids to private schools. Now, what I will say they probably did was send their kids to about 2 or 3 schools because you could choose schools at that time. So you would drive your kids to certain schools, and they didn't have to be on the north side. There were really great schools on the south side of town too, but all the educators and teachers and principals' kids went to the same 3 or 4 schools: Oglethorpe, Walter White. They were, I can name them, on one hand.
Okay.
But I think,
and they lived. It also pays to say they lived in those areas too. Now everybody in Atlanta is living everywhere, so they're living all over the city. So it's not just one particular location. You're kind of everywhere.
Yeah, and the school that I went to, that so many of my friends went to, that wasn't in my neighborhood either. It was actually in a neighborhood that was probably had more challenges than my neighborhood. But for whatever reason, it was on the route to a lot of schools where teachers worked, and they dropped off their kids there. And I can rattle off people who are so successful that were literally at the school with me. But, you know, in my opinion, to know what's happening in your public school, you have to be involved in your public school. And, you know, if you don't have kids, but you have a spouse that works in public schools, you get that feedback of what's happening. So everyone asks me, you know, what should I do? How should I volunteer? What happens? You know, what's the best way to get it up? I'm like, join your neighborhood public school. Even if your kids don't go there, just put yourself in that space and you will learn what the world is going through, right? Because a lot of times, you know, people don't really know what's happening because they are isolated behind their enclosed, gated communities in their private schools. And it's just easier. I think it became easier to say, if I'm gonna hustle, you know, because even if I have this great degree and this great job, I got student loans. You know, my parents didn't leave me money for this house that we bought. I'm making 75 to 80 cents on the dollar for the white man, what he's bringing home. And so there is a strong, and I got a cousin or a sibling that I'm helping out in some way, right? So what happens in the Black community is it's an easy fix sometimes to just say, I'm going to put my child in this school where I know that I don't, because I'm not going to lie, in a public school, you need to be present. Like, you need to volunteer, you need to be on PTA, you need to be muffins for moms, donuts for dads, all of that.
I love it. Muffin for moms, donuts for dads. Yes, all of it.
You can't do that. It feels like putting them in a space where you know it's proven time and time again, you know, that your child will be safe.
Right. You know what I love about having you on the show is because we don't talk enough about education and what goes on in our school districts across the
It's not sexy. Public schools are not sexy anymore.
Right. And so what we do is we put our kid in the school and we think the school is teaching them and learning them. So we know already right now, and by us not being present in the schools, and you made that, and I love what you said about your new role is about engagement. So how is it that we as Black people of color, make sure, and like you said, we have mom and dad to take care of, we have our own families to take care of, so we just put our kid in the school and then we say, okay, school, take care of our kid. But if you put your kid in a public school, like you said, you got to be hands-on. And even if you put your kid in private school, you still need to be hands-on, because now with all the critical race theory and all of the stuff that they don't want to teach your kid, that you think your kid is learning, and now we're finding out they're having a problem teaching your kids actual history. They want the makeup history of what they want because they want to feel comfortable about what it is that they're teaching their kids, and they don't want to feel guilty for the history of this country. You know, we need to have these conversations. And it's like Dr. Archie would say, we need to have these courageous conversations to actually talk about how our kids are being educated, because then we want to send our kids off to a PWI and they're going to feel left out and not involved. And then at this point in time, when we know, or the parents might feel, oh, you know what, I feel as my kid is not connected enough, and so therefore they need to go to an HBCU. And then when you want to send them to an HBCU, then all of a sudden you want to get, you know, upset because the HBCU is not delivering like you think they should, when in fact, the school that they were in, whether it be private or public, you were not involved. So help me out here and what's going on. Am I on the right track there? What's happening out here in these streets?
No, I think you are, you know, headed, you know, in the right direction. I do think that you have to be hands-on in any environment, obviously. And you also have the advantage sometimes in private schools of a history of the majority faring well, right? That doesn't always happen in public settings. You have bell curve,
Right.
So I get it. I get it 100%. What I will add to that is I do believe that if you make that choice for your family, watch very closely. I've worked in lots of environments, and it does something to a kid's psyche when they're lined up, and everybody notices the redhead, or the look at those beautiful blue eyes, or look at those beautiful blonde curls, or what have you, and your brilliant child realizes, okay, that's 3 in front of me. They're gonna say something about me in a minute.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens. You get 12 formative years of that. It does something to
Yes.
the psyche of a kid, right? It does something to us, right? It does something to us as adults. So in any arena, you need to be present and woke to make sure that your child is taken care of. The second part to that will be, even if your kid is good, check on the least of these. Because what we see is, yes, your child might be great. You might be great. But if there's a generation that is voiceless, that is not seen, they could become bitter and frustrated and brilliant at the same time, right? So it's not, they're going to do some things that are crafty, but they're using their powers for not what's best. So we have to be. That's what public education was founded on. It wasn't just that I did well and I learned. It was that I learned about the world and the people around me. So I learned empathy. I learned understanding. I learned about different cultures and genders and just sexual orientation at this point. So that's super important. And I will add also that you can get that at church. You can get that other places. You live in a Black community and your kids go to predominantly, historically predominantly driven school, then yeah, you can offset that, because your neighborhood, they come home and they play outside with kids that look like them. They go to church with kids that look like them. So they're not overlooked. There's a delicate balance. It's not, I don't want to say black or white, but it's not all or nothing. You just have to really be cognizant of what your kids are being exposed to. And there are gender-based colleges that serve this purpose. There are faith-based and religious-based colleges that serve this purpose. And they're needed, and they will always be needed, because kids and people need to feel seen. To be valued, and everybody needs to be valued in this culture, in this country.
What was interesting for me, because growing up, I grew up in Statesboro, Georgia, right down the street, 3 hours down. And here's to your Chardonnay. Raise you one, ching. And for me, there were 2 things that it reminded me in school of how it takes a village, as they say. I was in the 3rd grade going to the 4th grade, and I was at Marvin Pittman Laboratory School, which was on the campus of Georgia Southern. Wow. So we had educators from Georgia Southern come in and teach. And so it was a lab school. It was only 2 classes per grade. And I remember my teacher patted me on the back and she said, "He's one of the good ones." 3rd grade, 8 years old. And just because of conversations in my household, my mom and them being civic and social and educators and, focused, I went home and I told my mom that, and she said, "Excuse me?" She said, "What?"
You said, "What?"
Yeah. And I was like, "I'm one of the good ones." And she said, "I want to make sure I heard you correctly." And I said, "Yeah." She said I was one of the good ones. And so I, described the scenario, and she said, "Oh, okay, I get it." And so she said, I'm going out to school with you tomorrow. And she came out with me and she said, Miss Budek, I want to meet with you. And she said, I just want to let you know, Charlie came home and said that you said that he was one of the good ones. Well, I'm here to defend all the other kids who don't have parents, who will not come here and face you. All these kids are good. It depends on you and how you teach those kids. And that was life lesson to me of learning about education and how teachers put kids down at such an early age, and how those kids can be, and then fast forward, going to the 8th grade, 9th grade, when we start dividing up by, honors class, level A classes, back then that's how it was.
Right.
How some kids would say, oh, I don't want to be in the honors class that should have been in the honors class, but took the lesser route because they didn't have anybody to push them.
Yeah.
And so I really saw that experience in my 3rd grade led me to see how people envision and then want better for themselves in the 8th, 9th grade, then to leave and really get ready to go for, to college. And it really showed me how the divide happens, how we let the divide happen, but we let the divide happen because we're not involved in the student and what the students' everyday, course of action is.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have teachers, and I didn't have Black teachers until I got to high school, or if you don't have parents and come from a family where you are instilling education, I see how we get left behind. It's so easy.
Yeah. And, I know that our growing up in Atlanta was very unique, we did live in historic Southwest Atlanta, where, there were Hank Aaron lived on my street. Benjamin Mays lived literally 4 to 5 houses up on the other street. Maynard Jackson, who was the mayor at the time, right around the corner. And as I think I'm in the school that I'm at now, which is named after Ambassador Young's first wife. On Thursdays, we played tennis at his sister-in-law's house, and Jean Young was there, and Walter Young's wife was there, Sonia Young. So we grew up knowing that we were special.
Exactly. Right.
We never, we got color, obviously, but we knew that the only thing holding us back pretty much was what we thought.
Right.
And our parents would help as much as possible. And part of that help was giving us opportunities, right? I probably played, like 5 instruments before I was like 8. I play none now. But my parents like, my job was just to expose you. Something was going to catch. And I couldn't make that determination for you.
Right. When you think about it, and you think about how Atlanta and how Maynard Jackson and his posse, and if you go back and look at that film and how he basically, because you got to think about the thing about segregation and Jim Crow, it really worked to the advantage of African Americans in a way before integration, because we had more businesses. We really made sure that we were on top. Parents made sure the kids were on top of everything. So when you look at that documentary of Maynard Jackson, how he built that business community around Atlanta and how it instilled, because think about it, people in the south side of Atlanta, southwest side of Atlanta didn't go north. They did, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
They lived, they went to church. It was a community.
You didn't aspire to that.
Right.
You went shopping, you enjoyed the benefits of it, but you weren't like, when I get myself together, I'm moving to Buckhead. No.
Right. Exactly.
You were in your pool.
Right. And now you see, it's really interesting about how our fabric of our community, Atlanta is such a telltale sign, because now you do have Black people living all over the city. It's not one part of town that they're not in. Under every nook and cranny. And as a real estate professional now in the city of Atlanta, under every nick and cranny, there's someone Black there that wasn't there 20 years ago.
Right.
You know, so which is
And
good.
that's what our forefathers fought for. There was
Yeah.
no redlining. You could get a loan and live wherever you want to live. So that is progress.
Right. So
Progress.
I'm all for that. But the
Mhm.
sense of community that was in the SWATs, as everybody used to call it back in the day, Southwest Atlanta. Everybody, it's what we're missing when we do venture out and we, go into other places. And now people are trying to get that back through Jack and Jill and the links and because now I got my kid up in Paideio or Milton Academy Mills Academy or whatever the case may be. And they're the one of one or one of two, and they need that Black experience. And so you really kind of see how we kind of are disconnected.
Well, and trying to reconnect, right? Because I think you know this. The applications to HBCUs have tripled. I would dare to say in the last few years, and I think some institutions could say 4.0s only, and still have a freshman class. So yes, I do think that many people are, saying I did what I knew best at the time for my child and my family. And in these times and at this moment, this is the best option for my family. So I'm going to go with that.
Right. And I get it. You know what? Look, I get it. But I think there's a part of me as an adult male that I'm always looking at, whether it be from a personal standpoint or from a business standpoint or from a social standpoint with kids. And since I'm so involved with Howard alumni and with the baby bison that are coming in, I see so much of what's transpiring. And I don't have any kids, but I feel like I got 5,000 kids because seeing them from elementary all the way up. It's kind of one of those things where you see how people are matriculating through, their educational career, and you see what's working and what's not working. So yes, I do have an advantage of being able to, from the outside in, seeing what's transpiring. And like Howard had his largest class of 3,000, I think 77 people last year, which is bigger than Morehouse and Spelman all together.
Yeah, put together. Yeah.
Mind you, there's a lot going on there. And like you said, kids now with 4.0s or 3.7s and good GPAs, good GPAs and good SAT scores still can't get into Howard. And they're like, what? I can't get into Howard. You're like, you know how many applications we're getting?
Stellar students.
Right. And kids today, they're only studying. They're not out in the streets playing anymore. So like we did. Because I know I couldn't get into Howard today.
Right.
Plain and simple. My SAT score was, I wouldn't even be in. But anyway. So it's great. I love this topic. I think we need to talk more about education and what's going on there. As the engagement chair at this particular school, do you think you will expand that particular role? Do you think that role is something that's needed in other schools across Atlanta? Do you think that we can see that on another scale? Because what I do know now from Mayor Dickens, he wants to really partner back up with APS and really make that one and the same. So what are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. It's already started to happen. There are partnership coordinators popping up at schools because everybody realizes it takes a village, right? It takes a village to raise a child. So it's definitely already happening. And I think there was a time when the business community was engaged, and we all know there was a Black eye in Atlanta with the cheating scandal. And they didn't pull back, but they pulled up to make sure that they were doing the right work in the right space. And I think Mayor Dickens is the right person to now re-engage everyone, focused on one goal, one Atlanta, and that is to make sure that our future is solid. And that begins with our children. Very
Cool.
much so.
Well,
Very much.
everybody know you have a relationship with the former mayor, Mayor Keisha, and that you are a partner of the new mayor,
Yes.
Mayor Dickens. So we had a mayor in Atlanta named Keisha. Now we got a mayor in Atlanta named Dre. So which I love, and I came up in the airport and his big picture was right there. So that's all good.
Yeah.
You were very instrumental. I'm going to pivot. You were
Okay.
very instrumental in getting him elected with the Women for Andre Dickens in Atlanta. Is that something that you aspire to do? Do you aspire to be more fundraising, getting behind campaigns, or is this a one-time thing that you wanted to do? Because I know you talked about retirement in the near future.
Yeah.
So what are your aspirations? What are your goals?
Oh no, I love this question, and you hit the nail on the head. Back up a little bit. I was a poli-sci major at Howard. And I always thought, even when I graduated, I, pulled on some networks and had a interview with someone on the Hill and was offered a position, and it paid $13,000 a year. And my parents were like, "We can't supplement that, sugar. Bring your little self back on to Atlanta."
Okay.
But I've always loved politics. But at that point, I was like, this is why the Cuomos and the Kennedys, this is why you see legacies of political service, because in the beginning, it is a sacrifice. Like, it's a very little amount of money. Once you achieve a little bit of success, you can write a book, you can maybe do some speeches, you can figure out a way to supplement something like that. But otherwise, it helps to have deep pockets in your family, because you can do some of those things. You can clerk, you can do all these things in these offices. But with that said, I had the bug. That's why I went to Howard. I was like, how are you going to want to be a politician and not want to be in DC?
Right.
That is the political capital of the world. That's why I chose the school.
Okay.
And then I'll never forget, I went to it was a Christmas party. Back then we called it Christmas. Now we call it holiday party. Right. And I was sitting at a small table, and an older gentleman asked me, so what are you going to do? You just graduated, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I really want to go to law school. I'm working in a law firm, studying for the LSATs. I want to be a lawyer. Specifically, I want to, help young Black boys that have been caught up in the juvenile justice system. And I want to be a public defender. Like, I want to help them. And for the first time, as being childish, I didn't get the response. There's research behind when people say, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. They see what happens to the adults' faces. They're like, okay, they like that. I'm gonna keep saying that. But I didn't get that from this gentleman. And he was like, I said, what is that face for? And he was like, well, I guess that's admirable, but it seems very reactive. And I was like, tell me more, sir. And he was like, by the time a kid is caught up in the justice system, it's too late. Why not give them the tools, conflict resolution, problem solving, all of those strategies, so they don't need a public defender? And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, so what do you suggest, Mr. Smarty Pants? And he was like, have you ever thought about counseling? He introduced himself as the chair of the counseling department at Virginia Tech. And so I was, and he was like, you should come. I was like, I'm not going to Blacksburg. I love DC too much. I was in Northern Virginia at the time. Right. We have a satellite campus, and you can attend there. Literally December, I started January. Okay. And I loved every second. My master's is in human growth and development and counseling. And for 13 years, I did that work, which was prepping kids and adults, right? Because it was just like, this is a lump of clay. Whatever you say and do to mold this baby, is what this baby becomes.
Mm.
And I did it and I enjoyed it. But for the longest, I would work with kids, I would work with parents, get them in a good space, walk them back to class. And the teacher or the adult in the room would be like, hold up, is he or she ready to come back in? Because I can't have none of that. And you just watch the kid just
go right back. Wow.
And so
Wow.
then I said,
Mm-hmm.
you want to really affect change? You need to become the person who hires people. So that's when I went back and got a doctorate, because I never taught. I was not a teacher. I believe I was the first principal in my district to be hired that had never been a principal. So to follow the path that I did, I've never been a teacher.
Right.
To follow the path that I did. But I just was determined to hire and be strategic about individuals that I put in front of children.
Did you get resistance based on that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it never really ended, it never really ended.
People always thought that you were less than because you had never been in the classroom, so you didn't have an understanding of who and what they went through. Yeah.
And I always hired brilliant instructional people around me, and I never hid that fact, right? But what I knew was I had the ability to identify talent, put them in a position where they could strive, and then improve outcomes for kids. And on the second part of that, I could connect with anybody that I dealt with. I don't care about constituents or parents or funders or whatever, to get them what they told me they needed.
Now, where did that trait? Where did you learn that trait? Because that's a unique trait. Everybody doesn't have that skill set.
Yeah.
How did you? Is it your upbringing that?
So I think so. Absolutely. Obviously, it was my upbringing. God-given gift of discernment. And then I think also, I am a Gallup strengths coach for my district. And my number one strength is individualization. And that is ability to like look into someone and kind of figure out who they are. And then kind of work to put them in a place where they will thrive. And that has kind of always, served me well. I was skipped as a child. And I remember thinking, I don't belong. People are a little bit more advanced than me.
Right.
I'm watching everybody and I'm like, whoa. So I just learned to like watch.
Right.
I watched everything.
Okay.
And my mom tells a story when I was really little. She picked me up from I wanted to go to school so bad because my brother wanted to go to school and was in school, and she took me to school. And for the first 3 days, I loved it. And then she would come and I was crying and didn't want to go. And so one day she dropped me off and something happened. She had to circle back. And when she came back, a teacher was like yelling at a kid. Nobody was doing anything to me, but they were fussing at a kid. And I was in the corner just like shaking. So for whatever reason, I've always had this compassion for other people and this watchful eye for other people. And so I think my choices in life just kind of led me to that. And even with the situation of working on Mayor Dickens' campaign, I felt very strongly that he was the right choice for Atlanta. And any other choice was just not an option. And there were 15 people in the race. And I just always felt, and everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, because at the time in the beginning, he was polling at 5%. I had friends like, you better jump off that bandwagon fast.
I know he's your man, but yeah.
You got too many things going for you. You done turned around some schools. Everybody likes you.
But you stood true to your conviction. You were convicted. You knew the power of discernment, as my sister always would tell me, because I think me and you are kindred spirits in that way. She always said it's a blessing and a curse, and it's true because you see stuff before people see it. and you kind of know how things are going to work out before it works out. And sometimes you hate that, and sometimes it comes to your advantage, and you just have to go with it. And of course, you know how the old people would say, you got that premonition, you know.
Right.
Yes.
And you have to trust yourself. Now that's the upbringing part. You know,
Mhm.
I never doubted that I couldn't do anything. Right.
Mhm.
Now there were times when I didn't want to do anything. But when I decided that I wanted to do something and put my mind to it, no one could tell me that I could not do it. So it didn't matter that, oh, you've never been a teacher, how are you going to get the respect of people? I have people who call me now that I hired. And, I used to go through these things of like, you'd be on first grade one year and then fourth grade the next year. And it would be like, why are you moving people? I look online now, those fourth grade teachers are at each other's weddings, at each other's childbirths. And they will literally say to me, Dr. Jones, you know what you were doing. Like, I have never worked with a group of people that we synced so well with.
I was going to ask you that question. I was going to ask you, because people always think because you didn't teach that you made these decisions, and they probably looked at you like this, right? Did they come back to you years later and say, oh my God, she knew exactly what she was doing, And of course, you're going to have some of those outliers out there.
No, yeah. And really, to be honest, in the moment I saw outliers, but when it was over, and my tenure was done and I moved on to the next project, the next phase in my life or career, people would say, because they'd be like, oh, you're the nice lady. You too nice to the kids. You too this. And hate can never stomp out hate. Only love can do that.
Right.
And so they get it now. They get it. And parents, and I even during the campaign, I was very clear that over my 28-year career, let's say I impacted 1,000 people. That's the kids and a parent. Well, we all know there were the kids, siblings, two parents, grandparents. Right. But lowballing it, 28,000 people.
Right.
I've influenced, and they know who I am in this city.
Exactly.
So, that comes with it a large sense of responsibility.
No,
so
No, I'm saying that's great. And you really have. And like you said, the multiplier of that, there are people talking stories about you right now. You know how everybody always goes back to who influenced you, who inspired you, how did you see? You were probably brought up in places that you don't even know and don't even realize. And then you're probably out on the campaign trail with Andre, and they're probably looking at you and like, you probably even have a couple people up. You know what? You were in my son went to your school a couple of years ago, or whatever the case would be, all the time. So now, getting to that question that I proposed to you, are you going to be looking at doing campaigns through the city of Atlanta moving forward?
100%. 100%. That is my retirement plan. And I am so excited about it, going back to it after, it was my passion. I wanted to work for the Democratic Party. There were so many jobs that I, thought that I wanted. And, I knew that every step I was taking was making me a better person and taking me to my purpose, but it was never so clear than when, this situation presented itself. Because I was an advisor, a girlfriend, a friend, a confidant, a
strategist,
critical friend, so we could have, conversations.
Do you think you will find yourself, or is it a conflict of interest, you think, of working with his administration?
Oh yeah, I don't necessarily think that is my calling, number one, because I got 2 more years to full retirement, so I'm not walking away from this gig at all. And I do love it. I would be doing it if I didn't love it. And I'm actually at the school that I graduated from and he graduated from. So I mean, it's very passionate. I'm very passionate about it, and so is he. But with that said, I found the next phase of my voice and my purpose.
I love that.
I've always supported causes and people that I believe in, whether it was a teacher or a student or advocating for, a family that was, just on the periphery of the zone. And I was like, it's in the best interest that this kid stays here for the continuity of the education and all that kind of stuff. I've always advocated for what I believe in and people and causes that I believe in.
I love it.
Yeah, so I think this is just a natural progression or extension of that service. I do believe, I say all the time as a principal, and I've turned around 2 schools in my career, and all of that is about shaking hands and kissing babies and being out in the community. I do believe that schools change communities faster than politicians. So I do know that I've done great work in that area. And just an extension of that will be to get behind candidates. I am itching to support some people that have come out and that let us know that they're running for governor. And
well, I was about to say, I think, her campaign will, Stacey Abrams' campaign will be calling you up and being like the Women for Stacey in Georgia all day long. Have you on speed dial.
I'm going to tell you a little quick story. My first principalship was in Kirkwood, and that was her district when she was a state rep. And I remember the day that Stacey called to say she wanted to meet the new principal and she was going to come over. And she did that. She came to my office. She read to our children. So I know her before, probably not before, because we're all who we're going to be at a smaller version at the moment. But I knew she was great. And I also knew that she cared, and she was not tied by, she didn't have somebody in her office call me.
Right.
She didn't tell them to have me call her, so it tells me.
Correct. Yeah.
And we know each other now. Mutual respect exists to this day. So absolutely, if there was any way I could help a friend, that's important to me too. I believe in the politics of it all, but also, I have so many friends, like you said, Keisha, Raphael. That it's so much easier to support them because I know who they are.
Yeah, and you know their character. Yeah, exactly. No, and I'm with you on that. I think it's so easy to get behind people that you really know, and being in this space. Me and you are similar in that way, and that we know folks, and we help people fundraise from a different perspective, different lens, and me working with Kamala and raising money for her, and then all the other Bisons who were running this past election cycle. So it's a good space to be in. It's an interesting space to be in. Now we're coming up on, like 50 minutes. So I want to get to my question to you, which is, how does Dr. Evans Jones love the way she lives?
Oh, that is such a great question. I just love me, right? There was a time when I was worried about this or that, or, you need to get, a degree to prove to people who don't see you as an educator. Because, I didn't have an education degree, and I'm working in this space. So I was like, let's go get this doctorate. I mean, like I said, anything I put my mind to, I did it. But sometimes I needed a catalyst. I needed somebody to
push it.
Yeah.
I
show you, right? Now I don't need to show nobody nothing.
Right.
I'm doing it for me.
Exactly.
It feels so good. I hate that it took me this long to kind of get there.
But that's okay. That's why we're here, because it's to inspire. Your conversation tonight is to inspire someone to branch off, think about something different, think about what their passion is, to get them motivated to go after their goal. Because, my biggest thing in life as I grow into my season years is seeing people just exist, You know, it's like you still got a purpose. Even if you had job one, you still have, and there's still another opportunity out. We have so many skill sets.
Absolutely.
You know, especially I guess our generation, we were only defined by our job and our title, and about where we lived, about what we did.
If
So
we
all
were
of those things,
married.
yes, and did we marry? Did we have babies?
Kids.
All of that. And now you see these kids today, they are just doing it for themselves, not with any whole bar, and they are just they're trying to find out how to love the way they live. But they, you know, because they still, you know, when you're in the 20s and 30s, you still need some structure.
Yeah.
And it's kind of wearing them out because their coping skills is not like ours. Because you know, we had to cope.
Figure it out.
But what I love about their energy and what I love about how they see life is that I can do anything.
They take risks. They take risks. And if it doesn't work out, oh well, I tried. Now what am I gonna do? I'm gonna reinvent myself.
Right.
As many times as I have to.
Right.
And so yes, I agree. I love kids. I love how they think. I love, anyone will tell you, half of my friends are almost half my age. And that happens from working in schools hiring people, you know, and I see these blessings, and then they learn from me, I learn from them. It's just a beautiful thing. But yeah, loving the way you live is loving you first, right? And sometimes it was hard to say that. You're selfish, you're conceited, you're this, you're that. Everybody put all these titles on you. And now, you know, I don't care.
Exactly.
I am so comfortable with winning and losing. That I leave it all out on the field. I have no problems being transparent, knowing where that may keep me rising or keep me accountable when it don't work out.
Exactly.
And I'm okay with that. And it's a great, I believe, a great space to be in for me. So I don't know what the future holds, but I can just tell you, God has been so good and my life has been so blessed that I cannot wait to see what's next. So I'm gonna love the way I live, just doing me.
All right. We're going to end on that note because there's no other better way to end. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I thank you. I think my audience thanks you because it's just, like I said, it's a topic that we really don't discuss. And I think it was a great discussion in that way because we really need to get involved. At the end of the day, we really need to get involved and stay present in the kids' lives. If you have kids, if you have nieces or nephews, you can do your part as an auntie or uncle to really make sure that they're getting the education that they need and that they're in the right schools too, you know, and that they have really good people who are looking after them and making sure that you're looking at the curriculum of what they are learning. So stay focused on that before they get ready to go to college, not just when they get ready to go to college. So, you know, I just want to thank you for your time. Thank everybody for watching. Thank everybody. Continue, you guys out there, to love the way you live. And I will see you soon.
All right. Good night. Thank you for having me. Love you, Charlie.
You love you too, babe.
Bye-bye.